Okay. All right. Even though it wasn't announced in the original flyer, we continue with the Living to Eat or Eating to Live series. And tonight's class is called Getting a Rise Out of Your Bread. Okay. And I want to talk about the topic of chametz versus matzah, of leavened bread versus unleavened bread. Of course, if this would be the middle of the year, if this would be around Passover time, everyone would understand that it's part of a holiday lecture. But I think it's very important in terms of a series about the Torah attitudes towards food, even though we're here in the middle of the summer, we're more than 6 months before Passover, to discuss these topics. The mere fact that it's only a Passover prohibition is pretty astounding. The strong contrast of something that's kosher for 51 weeks of the year and absolutely forbidden to eat 1 week of the year should already give us pause. It's not like this week is unrelated to Passover. This is one of those other 51 weeks that brings the prohibition of Passover into sharp relief. It's the rule that defines the exception, and it's really a head scratcher. How can that be? How can a certain time define the accessibility or the acceptability of food or not? We understand Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, the activity of eating was forbidden. It's not particular food stuff. We can understand that that was our first class in the series, fasting versus feasting. We can understand that there should be such a thing, that one day a year should be decreed a day. Well, we don't eat. Right? It's not even so much about the food. The Maimonides, when he's talking about his laws of Yom Kippur, he gave them a title, Hilchos Shvisas Asa, the resting of the 10th day. It's like on a regular Shabbos, we rest from doing creative activity. And on Yom Kippur, which is called the Sabbath of Sabbaths, we also rest from ingestion, from taking food into our bodies. It's kind of a rest. It's kind of a strike against eating. Rather than saying, oh, all the foods in the world all of a sudden became forbidden. It's not about the foods, it's about us. Okay. That out of the way, that's one thing that's incredible about the prohibition against eating chametz, eating leavened breads on Passover. But there are a few others. Okay? It's not only the irregularity of it, the fact that it's only forbidden 1 week of the year, but how forbidden it is. We covered in this series, meat and milk combinations. And we learned that in meat and milk combinations, it's not only forbidden to eat, but it's forbidden to derive any benefit from. Chametz on Pesach, leavened bread on Pesach, is not only forbidden to eat, not only forbidden to derive any benefit from, but it's also forbidden to own. Bal Yerah, Bal Yimatzeh, there are prohibitions in the Torah that chametz, that leaven, should not be found and should not be seen anywhere in your property. Bal Yerah, Bal Yimatzeh. Also, something unheard of. Even if I'm not allowed to take my cheeseburger and feed it to Fido, or stoke my fireplace with it, there's no prohibition about owning it, about it being in my house. If somebody took my meat and my milk and cooked them together, there's no new aveira, you're not allowed to own it, parallel to chametz. None of the forbidden foodstuffs that I'm not allowed to additionally derive any benefit from has something parallel to this prohibition by leavened bread on Passover. So that's one thing that makes it, again, very unique. Now, before I point out the next uniqueness of the prohibition against leaven, I'm not presuming anything. I don't want to insult anyone's intelligence, but I'm not presuming anything. And therefore, I feel before we move any further, first we get a definition of what chametz is and what chametz is not. Okay? Maybe you've been guests at people's homes on Passover. Maybe you have a Passover kitchen yourself, and you'll go in and they're serving you sponge cakes this high, right? And Passover donuts and Passover kichel. I mean, what's going on over here? The answer is these things are either made out of matzah meal, that is to say, matzah, unleavened bread, that's been reground again back into flour, or they're made out of potato starch. Neither one of those is chametz. The definition of chametz is there are 5 types of grains recognized by the Torah. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a plant biologist. It could be that in those disciplines, grains, under the rubric of grains, you have more or fewer grains than what I'm about to spell out. But according to the Torah, the 5 grains that can be used for matzah on Passover, and hence have the capacity, if left to rise for more than 18 minutes, can become chametz as well, come from one of these 5. Either wheat, rye, spelt, oats, what's the 5th one? Barley. Wheat, rye, spelt, oats, and barley. If it ain't from one of those 5 grains, it's not Torah level chametz. Cannot be. Okay? Now you may have noticed in your kosher supermarkets over the last couple of years, because people have glucose intolerance, because people have wheat allergies, there's been a market the last couple of years of spelt and oat matzahs. Okay? If they weren't gouging the prices enough for your standard issue wheat matzahs, you can now overpay even more over the top by getting your spelt and oat matzahs. All right? Now, why they haven't done barley and rye matzahs yet, I'm not sure. Probably some entrepreneur will come up with one of those in the next couple of years and charge triple what they charge for the spelt matzahs, would be my guess. But in the meantime, that's what we're holding. Okay, so bottom line, that is chametz and matzah. Chametz and matzah both come out of those 5 grains. If you make a matzah, that is to say, that from the time the water hits the flour has been watched since the time of the harvest, so that no water comes in contact with it, and then when water finally does come in contact with it, less than 18 minutes transpire between the contact with the water and the cooking process, and I use the word cooking rather than baking advisedly, you'll see why in a minute. That's the definition of matzah. Okay? So again, you're playing with fire. It's the same thing. You cannot possibly make chametz, make leaven, out of potato starch. If there's some other grain out there, rice, what do they call, what's kasha called in English? Okay. Buckwheat, groats, okay. Does it have to do with wheat? Or it's something else? It's a legume, right? It's a legume of some kind.
It's actually a fruit, but that's what it says.
Okay. It's a fruit. She says it's a legume. Okay, again, talk to the botanist, talk to the nutritionist, talk to the plant biologist. I don't know. No, they don't eat it, but that's not even prohibited on a rabbinic level. That's only prohibited on the level of custom. It's a minig. That's all it is. It's post-Talmudic. Okay? At any rate, it's not chametz midaraisa. It's not, okay? All right. Now, let's get back to the singularities of this dietary prohibition that we call chametz. Another thing, this is not really singular, but just gives you some idea about what kind of fire we're playing with, so to speak, is. Okay? What do you think is worse? Eating pork or eating the hindquarters of a glatt kosher slaughtered beef? Which is considered a more severe dietary infraction. Okay, and just to make it a little bit gory, how about this? Drinking blood. Let's start a sequence in level of severity. Vote for number 1, number 2, and number 3. Okay? Who says blood is number 1? Only one person thinks blood is number 1. Okay.
Some are supposed to believe.
What?
Number 2,
okay.
The hindquarters.
That's what I think.
Hindquarters.
Is number 1?
Yeah.
The worst.
Blood is the worst.
Blood is the worst. What do you say?
I think they're all equally.
They're all equally bad. Okay. The correct answer is, now that we're doing a little quiz show night here, correct answer is the most lenient of the 3 is pork. Okay. Pork is something we call an isser lav in temple times, in judicial system, fully empowered times. It was a corporal offense, punishable a corporal punishment. The other 2, eating from the hindquarters of even the right species and properly prepared, it's called chaylev, the forbidden fats. Chaylev and dam are what we call an isser kares. An isser kares is not something that the courts administer. The word kares means to be cut off, sometimes translated as excommunication. I'm not sure that that's a proper translation. Suffice it to say, it's not something you want to get involved in. The words for kares throughout the Bible are words, v'nichras me'amav, you will be cut off from your nation. Hailech hariri, you will go without eternity, and so on and so forth. It's a spiritual punishment of some kind. It's something that God administers. It's rough stuff. Just to give you another litmus test about why it's considered more severe, when the temple stood, we had something called sin offerings. You did not bring a sin offering. You were not required to bring a sin offering for a sin of omission. You were not even required to bring a sin offering for every sin of commission. If I ate pork, I did not bring a sin offering. When did I bring a sin offering? If those types of sins for which the punishment is kares, if I did them with premeditation, if I did one of those by accident, right? Somebody served me a porterhouse steak. I'm assuming porterhouse steaks are from the forbidden hindquarters. I'm not sure. I've never seen a kosher butcher carry a porterhouse or T-bone, so I'm assuming that those are the bad cuts. Okay? Somebody serves me a porterhouse steak, telling me it's a rib steak. I ate it by accident. If the temple stands, I have to bring a sin offering. Same thing happens with pork. I don't have to bring anything in terms of sacrificial offerings. Okay? So, chametz on Pesach is a kares. If I eat chametz on Pesach, it's worse than eating pork. It's equivalent in severity to eating forbidden fats or blood. Okay. Now, finally, if you weren't confused enough, I'm going to confuse you. And just by way of caveat, before we get too deep into the class, I want to say this. You know that one of the favorite books that I love to quote whenever I give a series, and certainly when we did the series on great books and their authors, is something called the Sefer HaChinuch, the book of mitzvah education. Okay? And that is one of the classics of the mitzvah counting literature, and it's also one of the classics of mitzvah philosophy. It's a very organized book. He goes through the system of the weekly parshios, and in each parsha he tells you how many mitzvahs there are until he arrives at the magical number of 613. Parenthetically, I'm told that in the world of emails, 613 is the most popular suffix to anyone's name in an email address. There are like 10 million 613s out there, and there are only 5 million identifiable Jews. Okay, I'm exaggerating, but supposedly there are a lot of 613s that people use in their email address handles. That's what I'm told. I happen not to, but it's very popular. Okay, at any rate, we know we have a tradition that there are 613 mitzvahs in the Torah. The Sefer HaChinuch enumerates them, and in each mitzvah, he tells you the verse in the Torah where from which it's derived. Sometimes it's very explicit, sometimes it's more implicit. But that's how he starts off his piece, his essay on every mitzvah. Where does it say in the Torah, do this or don't do that? And now I'm going to tell you mishar she'amitz. I'm going to share with you some of the philosophical underpinnings, what we call the tameh, the reasons or the tastes of the mitzvahs. When he gets to what I'm about to share with you, he basically throws up his hands in frustration. And he says, understanding what's behind this mitzvah is way beyond me. He doesn't say this about meat and milk combinations, even though you know how tough that one was. I'm not an absolute expert in the entire book of the Sefer HaChinuch, but I don't know if there's another mitzvah in the Torah where he more or less admits ignorance. He comes close to admitting ignorance. And then he apologizes, says, look, I'm writing this book for Bar Mitzvah Bachrim. I'm writing these books for young know-it-all Jews, who, if you don't give them some rational reason to go on, they're going to say, this is nonsense. And then even later when their minds are, it's like Mark Twain said, it's amazing how much wiser my dad got between my 18th and 22nd birthday. How much wiser my dad got, right? That's how it is, Or like the slogan I've seen posted in many offices, why didn't all of life's problems hit me during adolescence when I had everything figured out, right? So, same concept. He's writing it for Bar Mitzvah Bachrim, he's writing it for adolescent Jews, and he says if you don't give them something to go on, and something easily digestible, almost intellectual junk food, for them to work with, they're going to dismiss it out of hand, and even later, when they mature, they're not going to bother to take a second look. So that's why I feel it's incumbent on me to say something, say anything. Right? Okay. So let me tell you what I'm talking about. Not only is chametz unique in that it's only prohibited during a certain time, it's also unique that it's only prohibited in a certain place. Anyone want to take a guess at the place before I? And so the rest of the year, what? No, I'm not talking about Passover.
Oh.
It's in time. It's only prohibited during Passover, and the rest of the year, it's prohibited in a certain place. Anyone want to hazard a guess at what place it's forbidden?
The temple.
The temple. Take a look at this. Okay, Leviticus 2. Leviticus 2. Let's start from chapter 2 in Leviticus, okay? I'll tell you which page it's on. Betty Ann, relax, patience.
Okay.
I'm developing the case here. Just give me some patience. Okay.
What page? I'm sorry.
We are starting on page 503. Okay. Now, there's a lot to read, and I want to read it all. So I'm going to give you a synopsis till we get to where we have to get to. Okay. Principle number 1. There's such a thing in the Torah called meal offerings in English. Meal as in corn meal, matzah meal, oat meal. Meal here being a synonym for flour, F-L-O-U-R. Right? Meal means a grain or some other kind of bakeable foodstuff that has been ground or milled back into particulate matter. That's what we call meal. Meal offerings mean things that came from flour. Now, whereas for the matzah, the ritual matzah that you may want to use the night of Passover, 5 grains are acceptable. When it comes to the meal offerings in the temple, only 2 grains were acceptable. And basically the lion's share, 99.9% of all offerings had to be wheat flour. There are 2 exceptions to the rule that came from barley flour, but they do not pertain to our discussion tonight. So it's been reduced from 5 grains to 1 grain, wheat. There are 5 different ways to offer a meal offering. One can be raw, basically. You mix the flour with the oil, and in that doughy or battery mixture, that's your meal offering. And therefore, that were cooked. And again, I use the word cooked advisedly. Okay, they are as follows in Hebrew. They are called the mincha al machavas, the mincha marcheshes, and the mincha ma'afei tanur, of which there were 2 types, rikikim and kikim avjucha. Where is it? Hold on one second. The baked offering, ma'afei tanur, chalois and rikikim. Okay, loaves and wafers. Okay, ma'afei tanur is baked in an oven. Okay, the mixture that's baked in the oven, if it's spread very thin, it comes out wafer-like, something like the kind of matzahs that we use on Pesach. That's one kind of baked in the oven matzah. Another kind of baked in the oven matzah was a little bit thicker. And the way the oil flour mixture worked, the oil was more part of the batter. It gave it a richer batter, hence a little bit of a thicker consistency. Either way, these were not chametz. They were baked in terms of matzah. Now, there are 2 other kinds of menachos that weren't baked at all. They were fried. One was fried on a skillet or a griddle, and one was deep fried in a deep fryer. Those are called, respectively, the one that's fried on a griddle is called al machavas, and the one that's fried in a deep fryer is called marcheshes. Okay? However, here's the here are the operative parts that we got to see. Okay, again on page 503. Take a look first on verse 4, the baked offering. Verse 4: if he brings a meal offering that was baked in an oven, it shall consist either of unleavened loaves made of wheat meal mixed with olive oil, or flat matzahs saturated with olive oil. But you see the word matzah and unleavened loaf? Okay? That's what it says in the Torah. There's a positive mitzvah, to bake them as matzah. The next one, the pan offering. Verse number 5. If the sacrifice is a pan-fried offering, okay, what I called before a griddle, it shall be made of wheat meal mixed with olive oil, and it shall remain unleavened. These are all positive commandments. Okay, turn the page, 505. Okay, here it doesn't say the requirement for matzah explicitly yet, but besides the positive commandments, take a look at verse 11. Do not make any meal offering that is sacrificed to God out of leavened dough. Kol ha-mincha, the Hebrew is asher takriv l'Hashem, lo seyosei chametz. You all know, I think, the Hebrew word chametz. Don't make a mincha, don't make a meal offering chametz. That's a negative commandment in the Torah. This is because you may not burn anything fermented or sweet as a fire offering to God. Okay? Now, it's a technical problem. There's really nothing terrible about the rest of the mincha. The way the mincha worked was you brought a certain measure of flour, a certain measure of oil, and the Kohen took what was called malo kumtzah. He would stick his hand into the offering. According to Rashi, I'm not going to the Rambam Shita right now, according to Rashi, he would stick his hand in like this, shave off the top part with his thumb, the bottom part with his pinky, and what remained in his hand, that was the only part that went on the altar. The rest, what was left over of the mincha, was eaten by the Kohanim. The problem with preparing a mincha in a way that it becomes leaven is because of that part which goes on the altar. That's what it says explicitly in this verse. Let's read it again. What?
I don't understand that. How does that...
Before you don't understand, let's read it again. There's a question of reading comprehension, not a big philosophical comprehension yet. Listen. Do not make any meal offering that is sacrificed to God out of leavened dough. Why? This is because you may not burn anything. It's a problem of burning on the altar. You may not burn anything fermented or sweet as a fire offering to God. Okay? The actual Hebrew word for sweet is dvash, usually translated as honey. Okay? From there we learn that the bikurim, we're not talking about bees honey here. We're talking about the first fruits, date honey, fig honey, those kind of honeys. The first fruits that are offered as gifts to the Kohanim, that's all they are, gifts to the Kohanim. You should not think that part of the bikurim of the first fruits offering are supposed to be burnt on the altar. No such thing. This is where we know it from. This is the prohibition against bringing part of your first fruit offerings as burnt offerings to God.
Why?
Okay?
Why?
Give me a little time. You want to steal my whole thunder over here? Answer number 1. Answer number 2. The Sefer HaChinuch didn't know. I should know. He's stretching for explanations. You want me to know? Okay. Hopefully before the evening's over, we'll have some kind of an approach.
What is that word here that it says what I don't know? Frankincense or what is frankincense?
Frankincense? Frankincense is a kind of very white spice. Yeah. There were 2 parts of the mincha. I didn't even mention that because, again, there's just too much information to assimilate, so let's make it quick. They used to spread on top of the mincha. They would mix the flour and the oil, and then they would spread this very white spice on top of the mincha. The parts of the mincha that went on the altar was first they would then sweep up again. All the lavona, it's called. Lavona, frankincense. That is frankincense. Lavona is Hebrew. Frankincense is English. That would go on the mizbeach. That would be burnt to God. And then what was left of the flour and oil mixture, the 3 fingers that the Kohen brought up, that's what. Okay, fine.
In the third thing also said that salt is very important to be.
Correct. Fine. Okay, point number 1. We see clearly that menachos, or at least going on the altar, chametz is a no-no. Okay? It could even be allowed, you weren't 100% right, it could be allowed in the rest of the temple. But to go on the altar, it's forbidden. Okay? Okay, we repeat it. Hold on, did we have this already? Beis Yud Aleph. Did I just do 11 or not? What verse did I just do?
11 you did.
11.
Okay, I did 11.
I have no idea. Question.
Yeah, fermented in this context means leavened. It doesn't mean fermented as an alcohol. It means the yeasty kind of fermentation that causes the rising of bread. Okay. All right, now take a look in chapter 6, verse 9. Just a repetition of this. 6, verse 9, page 523. Okay. Page 523, verse 9. And you can see the heading on this chapter is called Laws of the Meal Offering again. Aaron and his descendants shall then eat the rest of the offering. The rest of the offering meaning after you've burnt on the altar the frankincense and the colmates and the 3 fingers that were brought up. It must be eaten unleavened bread in a holy place. They must therefore eat it in the enclosure of the communion tent. It shall not be baked as leavened bread. So then again, even though in the deep fried one, it doesn't say explicitly to make it matzah or prohibit it to be made chametz, this is the catch-all prohibition where we see clearly nothing that's a meal offering of which any part goes on the altar can be prepared chametz.
I have one small question.
Okay, go ahead.
Did they have to eat it raw, or did they were able to bake it like a matzah?
Well, 4 types of it were edible before sacrificing.
Okay.
The only one that you're talking about is the plain minchasol, the one that came from the batter.
Right.
Yes, they could prepare it before eating. They didn't have to drink it as a batter.
I was
Right.
to know, 'cause
Yeah.
was
It may be edible. I mean, you never snuck into your mom's kitchen and ate the cookie dough while it was still dough. Yeah. Okay. Forgive me for asking a personal question. Okay. Okay. Now, if this wasn't confusing enough, Barian has already raised the point that a little bit incorrect. It's not the showbreads. The showbreads also had to be matzah. Showbreads were something called the lechem hapanim. I think a better translation is the face breads, but in most Bibles they translate showbreads. That was something that went on the shulchan. There was one of the vessels, one of the furniture, I should say, of the tabernacle and the temple was a table, and basically the only function of this table was to display 12 special loaves that basically looked like this, like a U-shaped thing. And those also were baked in forms to come out with that U-shape, but they were also baked within 18 minutes of mixture of ingredients. They were not leavened either. What was leavened was the shtei halechem batzeres. There were special loaves that were made for the holiday of Shavuos as part of the sacrificial offerings for the holiday of Shavuos. Those had to be baked chametz. It wasn't even optional. It was a mitzvah of the Torah, make them chametz, right? However, the catch being, no part of those loaves ever went on the altar. So it's not a contradiction to the general rule yet. Now, if you're not confused enough yet, take a look at this. This is chapter 7. Chapter 7, we're going to start around verse 11. Page 527, excuse me. 527. Okay, now here we have a confluence of an animal offering and a meal offering. Okay, there's something called a peace offering. Within the general heading of peace offerings, there's a subdivision called a thanksgiving offering. Okay? Basically, there are 4 types of situations that present danger to life, and if you make it out of those alive, you're supposed to bring a thanksgiving offering to thank God for saving your life. Okay? That's what we're talking about over here. The thanksgiving offering was an animal sacrifice. However, there was something called lachmei toda, the loaves of thanksgiving that came along ancillary to this animal offering. Now, where is it? Take a look on page 527. We'll read 11 through 13. This is the law of the peace offering that is sacrificed to God. If it is offered as a thanksgiving offering, because there are generic peace offerings that you can bring anytime the Spirit moves you, right? But then there's a thanksgiving offering that's not an absolute requirement, but still it's suggested that you bring it when your life is saved. If it is offered as a thanksgiving offering, then it must be presented along with unleavened loaves mixed with oil, flat matzah saturated with oil, and loaves made of boiled flour mixed with oil. Sound familiar? Doesn't that sound like the 3 types of menachas?
Yeah.
Now get this. The sacrifice shall also be presented along with loaves of leavened bread. It's got to have 40 loaves. 30 out of the 40 loaves have to be matzah. 10 out of the 40 loaves must be chametz. That's the mitzvah. That's the correct way to do it. So, what is going on over here? Is matzah good? Is chametz bad? If chametz is bad, how come we can have it the rest of the year? If chametz is bad, how come the breads of the Thanksgiving sacrifice can be made of matzah? How come the breads that we bring, the offering that we bring on Shavuos, can be chametz? What's going on over here? Yeah, it's quite confusing. And like I said, the Sefer HaChinuch basically threw up his hands. Okay. Having said that, I will share with you, let's start by telling you what the Sefer HaChinuch does say. And I found it pretty intellectually satisfying. Maybe this means that I have arrested development since I was an adolescent. But it made a lot of sense to me. I kind of liked it. Okay. He says as follows. What is the difference between chametz and matzah? I told you already. They have to come from the same grains. When we're talking vis-a-vis Passover, there are 5 grains that they come from. Okay? When we're talking about the prohibition on the altar, I suppose somebody wanted to be ornery and just take a loaf of rye bread from home and throw that on the altar, there will also be the transgression. Okay? But basically, when you're talking about meal offerings in the temple, you're talking about things that only come from wheat flour, right? What is the difference between chametz and matzah? One is spelled with a hey, one is spelled with a ches. They both have the others, 2 letters the same. Isn't that interesting? They're both mem tzaddik. Right?
How it's cooked.
Right. It's not a question of ingredients. It's a question of how it's cooked. Get specific. What makes a matzah and a chametz in terms?
18 minutes.
Right. It's a question of time lapse. That's all it is. The ingredients are identical. Now, parenthetically, I want to say that yeast is also forbidden both on Passover and on the altar in the temple. Okay? But you don't need yeast to cause leavening. Or, I should also say, that in the olden days, in pre-industrial times, not all yeast was the kind of yeast that you go into your supermarket bakery section today and buy a cube or a block of yeast. A lot of times they had something called sourdough, which was basically your non-yeast dough the last time that you basically just let it rot and ferment, and that was a primitive kind of yeast as well. It's called sourdough, and the word sa'ar in the Torah refers to both. So basically, again, it's just another kind of chametz. It's just more flour and water that you allowed time to elapse on. Okay, so basically, the whole difference between chametz and matzah is not one of ingredient. It's a question of allowing time to elapse.
Also, I would say that it's watched over. That's very important for me.
Watched over for what?
It's watched over.
What are you watching it for? You're not watching that wrong ingredient shouldn't get in there.
No.
You're only watching it for the time elapse. Okay. So I'm saying the watching is not something separate. Yeah?
No water should get into you. It's watched over.
Right, because if water gets into it, then more than 18 minutes will elapse before it becomes a bread, before it's baked. It's all about the time. Even the watching, even the hashgacha, the shmira, is to make sure the time doesn't elapse on it. Says the Sefer HaChinuch, what I believe to be a very beautiful, I think, and even intellectually satisfying homiletic approach. It's like this. Look, we're talking about sacrifices. Sacrifice means my service to God. Okay? If you want to be a sloth, if you want to be a slacker in your job, in your education, maybe even in your interpersonal relationships, it's corrosive enough. It's not a good thing. So it's always good to do things and do things quickly. Never put off for tomorrow what you can do today. Procrastination is a terrible thing. Full disclosure, I have a confession to make. About 6 years ago, I bought a tape series from one of these motivational speakers called How to Beat Procrastination. The shrink wrap is still on. I kid you not. The shrink wrap is still on. So, that was when they still sold tapes. That was before CDs. That was before MP3s. You see how dated the whole business is. Okay. At any rate, procrastination is never good. Okay? In serving God, it's poisonous. Says the Sefer HaChinuch, the homiletic, symbolic meaning of this, that you don't put as part of your offering to God some of the chametz, means don't procrastinate. When the Spirit moves you, do the mitzvah. When the time to do a mitzvah comes, do a mitzvah. As sages tell us that even the most unpleasant mitzvah imaginable, the binding of Isaac. Okay? Can you picture in your mind a mitzvah that the true servant of God ever had to do in their lifetime that could have been more distasteful, more off-putting than the binding of Isaac? Abraham is commanded, take your one only beloved son and raise him for a human sacrifice, for an offering. And it says about that episode, Vayashkem Avram Baboker. Avram got up early, before dawn. And he did it. He was raring to go. They say about the great Hasidic master, Rabbi Yitzchak of Barditchev, that the common custom is that we shake lulav and esrog. We perform that mitzvah of the 4 species on the holiday of Sukkot. We wait until Hallel. We pray the first part of the service, and there's the Hallel part of the service, and before Hallel, that's when you shake your lulav and esrog. That's the common custom. Strictly speaking, though, it's a mitzvah shazman grama. It's a positive time-linked mitzvah. Any time during the day of Sukkot, you're allowed to perform the mitzvah. Hasidic legend, tradition has it that the great Hasidic master of Rabbi Yitzchak Barditchev stayed up the entire night of Sukkot, the first night of Sukkot, lulav and esrog on the table, right in front of him, peering out his window, waiting for the dawn to break. So immediately, the first second that he was allowed to perform the mitzvah, he performed the mitzvah. And so it goes. When it's time to do a mitzvah, try to do it sooner rather than later. There are great things in store for those who are the first 10 to make a prayer quorum in the morning or afternoon, whenever it's time to daven. Very great things for the people who are the first 10, and even more so for the first guy to walk through the doors of the shul. Tremendous schar, tremendous reward that's promised to such people. So, alacrity, what we call in Hebrew zrizus, doing things as quickly as you can, as soon as you can, because you have to understand, what does that mean, what Rabbi Yitzchak did? He wasn't living his ritual life pro forma. Oh, God, look, I'm a good man, I'm a man of duty, but what a albatross on my neck, Let's just dispense with my obligations, and I'll get on to doing what I really want to do, okay? A person like that isn't staying up all night to perform the mitzvah. He'll get around to it when he has to, he'll do it, okay, fine, I did it, finished. That means it's a labor of love. I can't wait to do this mitzvah for you. And the earlier I do it, the more and the better mitzvahs I can perform. That's really what it's all about. How many mitzvahs can I pack into my day? Well, if you procrastinate, if you dilly-dally about it, if you're not working efficiently, not too many. All right? If you do things quickly and with alacrity and with energy, that speaks about love, that speaks about ardor, that speaks about a desire to do more and more. That's why it's so essential. It's essential, I think, in all walks of life. But in particular, when it comes to doing mitzvahs, zrizus, alacrity, is the ticket. Says the Sefer HaChinuch, that's the message of leaven. He doesn't go into sweets, I'm sorry. He doesn't talk about honey. Maybe there are other commentaries that talk about honey, but I wasn't researching honey for tonight's class. That's the reason why leaven shall not go on the, on the altar in the temple.
Because of the time.
Because of the time factor, right. Okay? The message being that whenever you serve God, we don't have a temple today, we're not bringing meal offerings, we're not bringing animal offerings, we're not bringing any kind of sacrifices. The message is that when it comes to your relationship with God, when it comes to doing mitzvahs, alacrity, quickness. Right? So he says, he doesn't reference the Thanksgiving offering, but he does talk about what Berian was talking about. He does talk about, again, not exactly right, not the showbreads, but these special loaves that you brought on, on the holiday of Shavuos. He says, when you're talking about a tzibur, he says, individual people can be more energetic, more high energy, or lesser energy, or absolute slackers. When you're talking about a tzibur, when you're talking about the congregation of Israel, we needn't worry. Nobody's going to miss a time limit. When it's a public work, when it's a public affair, and basically the only public meal offerings that were an occasion that happened once a year were these. There were lots of public. There were also lots of public is not the word I'm looking for. Communal. There were lots of communal animal offerings, but the only communal meal offering besides the showbreads that kind of got dull because they were a weekly affair. The only occasion, only once a year, annual meal offering was these special loaves that they brought on the holiday of Shavuos. Says the Sefer HaChinuch that because it was a communal thing, the community is not going to slack. An individual might slack. A community doesn't slack. That's what he says. Okay, that's probably the part that he feels is a little bit weak. It was going good until he considered the. Now, parenthetically, again, even those Shavuos loaves, no parts of them went on the altar. They were there. They were part of the ancillary to the animal sacrifice, but they themselves, no part of them, not even a handful, ended up on the altar. Okay. I want to add one thing to this inside of the Sefer Chinuch, and this is from the Sefer Pachid Yitzchak. Pachid Yitzchak says as follows. It's a very beautiful mashal that our sages give us to explain why long before it became Mick Jagger's theme, it was a truism of human nature that I can't get no satisfaction. Nobody can ever get any satisfaction. Human nature is insatiable. Okay, in the words of the sages of the Talmud, Yesh Lamana writes in Messiah. You want 100, you have 100, you earned 100, you want 200. Right? You bought a Rolls, you want a Bentley. You got a Bentley, you want a DeLorean, whatever. Right? You have a DeLorean, you want a yacht. You have a yacht, you want a spaceship. That's human nature. Ain't on a mace, v'chatzi tavas v'yadeh. No one dies with even half of what they lusted after achieved. That's what our sages teach us. We can't get any satisfaction. And our sages gave a beautiful allegory to explain it. And it says as follows. He says, try to imagine, okay, think, Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's court. Try to imagine you have a princess, and for some, I don't know, maybe sadistic reason, I don't know, for some reason, her father, the king, decides to marry her off to a pauper, a yokel, a country bumpkin from the hinterlands, and the bumpkin is not in King Arthur's court. He doesn't move into the palace. He sends his daughter to live with this guy in his hovel. Can you imagine? Nasty king, right? Not so fast. We're talking about God here. Just take it easy. Yeah. I'll tell you in a second what the allegory symbolizes. Okay. So, here you have the peasant. What a lucky boy am I. A princess I married. Oh, Miss, a princess. Classy, brainy, beautiful. What can I do for her? I'm going to bring her a leg of mutton. He brings her a leg of mutton. She takes one bite, spits it out into her lace-embroidered handkerchief. Stringy, gamey, disgusting. What are you talking about? This is a delicacy. This was 3 weeks' salary for me. What do you mean? You may be pleasing on the eye, but boy, are you high maintenance, But that's how it is. She's a princess. She's not going to lose her class. She's not going to lose her rarefied tastes, right? Just because she happens to be stuck with the pauper, with the peasant. And the peasant tries, and he keeps on trying, and he goes to the local butcher, and he says, is there anything better than a leg of mutton? He says, I don't know, I heard of this thing called filet mignon. Whatever. He keeps on trying, and nothing works. He just doesn't have the currency. It's not available. He doesn't have what they have in the palace kitchens. Says the Medrash, human life is a marriage between a princess and a pauper. The soul is a princess. The body is a pauper. The soul is coming from the supernal, eternal, transcendent spheres, and there are pleasures and delights over there that are totally out of our ken. We poo-poo them. We say, all right. A cosmic suntan, you sit there and you bask in the shine of the Shekhinah. Whoopee. Doesn't sound too exciting to me. Yeah, it doesn't sound too exciting to me because you're a yokel, because you're a bumpkin. You don't know what the finer things are, It's like the old Jackie Mason routine. You got to develop a taste for it, A Frankfurter with French fries, I don't got to develop a taste for because it's good. Cabernet Sauvignon, I got to develop a taste for. I don't want to develop a taste for. Right? That's how it goes, We can't appreciate what spiritual pleasures are because we're material. We're material beings. So in the meantime, we always look for surrogates. We have this yearning inside of us. We have this ambition. We have this frustrated, unsatisfied soul in us. And we don't have the currency to give her pleasure. We don't have the wherewithal. But we keep on trying. And we keep on raising the bar. And it's an exercise in futility. Ad kan the medrash. Okay, so that's the sadistic, right? For reasons known to the king alone, for some reason this marriage in the end is going to be good, even for the princess, right? Okay, that's a topic for another series. Okay, but not sadistic at all. On the contrary, the heart of divine kindness, the milk of divine kindness. Fine. So the Pachid Yitzchak adds like this. He says we have to understand something. And this is a little profound here, a little nuanced. Time is also a creation. We open up the Genesis narrative. On the first day, God created heaven and earth. On the second day, He created a firmament. On the third day, He created the luminaries, and He told the waters to... I don't even know if I have my chronology right anymore. Okay, I'm lost after the first day, right? But we just assume time is a given. There's a calendar. There are days, there are months, there are years. There's all of that, right? And God is creating within that given framework. False. Time is also a construct. Time is also a creation. And we can't appreciate spirituality, we can't appreciate heaven, but we sure can't appreciate time. We live within time, we know how to measure time, we have timepieces. Even if we didn't have timepieces, we feel the passage of time. Right? Time is also a creation. It's also something of the here and now world. And even that disgusts the soul. Disgusts, maybe too strong a word, it fails to satisfy the soul. When a person does a mitzvah with alacrity, when his mitzvahs become matzos, and this is not my wordplay, this is the wordplay of the Talmud, Hushmartem es hamatzos, you should guard, as Mrs. Bennett said, the matzos, the unleavened loaves that you're going to eat on Pesach. Mikan say Chazal, from here we learn, she'ein machmitzin es hamitzvos. Don't let your mitzvahs get spoiled through time elapsed, through elapsed time. Not just the mitzvah of eating matzah the night of Passover. Don't let any of your mitzvahs ferment through spoilage. Says the Pachid Yitzchak, based on this Vilna Gaon, that time is also a creation. That the most ephemeral, the thing probably most approaching spirituality, the most immaterial thing, I should say, the most gossamer thing, is time. Yeah? Jim Croce saying, if I could put time in a bottle. But you can't put time in a bottle. All right? It goes. It's there. It slips through your finger. Taka, like the sands of the hourglass. When we do a mitzvah with alacrity, it's the soul asserting itself over the body and saying, I don't need your leg of mutton. I'm eternal. I'm from a sphere of eternity. You're trying to satisfy me with time? Eternity doesn't just mean forever. A Google, I remember before Google, the big website came out, my little kids, when they were 3 and 4 years old, they used to like to try to top each other with the big numbers. I like you 1 million. No, I like you 1 billion. I like you 1 trillion. I like you a googly. You know what a googly is? It's pronounced Google. I think it's one with 100 number, one with 100 zeros, 1,000 zeros. I'm not sure. Okay, whatever. Right? Infinity, eternity, doesn't just mean higher than we can count. We always think of eternity in terms of time that can't get any bigger. Maybe it's time that can't get any smaller. Maybe it's not time. That's really the point. It's the antonym of time. It's not the extension of time. It's the antonym of time. The way the soul asserts itself over the body, it's a whole different dynamic than a type A personality in the corporate world. Or an athlete, who gets up early for... That's not a strong-willed person, a non-lazy person. When you're talking about spirituality, when you're talking about doing mitzvahs, which again, the Sefer HaChinuch says, that is the main lesson of why we don't make meal offerings out of chametz. We're talking about the soul asserting itself. Okay? The gal in this marriage wearing the pants in the family. Okay? This is my time, or timelessness, so to speak. Okay? Forget your mutton, forget your spare ribs, whatever you want to bring me. It's all nonsense. I come from the sphere of eternity. In the sphere of eternity, there's no time. There's no such a thing as time. That's what it means when we don't allow spoilage, when we don't allow time to elapse in doing our mitzvahs. Okay. So much for the portion of the class that's dealing with the rather exotic topic of chametz on the mizbeach, on the altar in the temple. Let's talk a little bit about what's much more in our sphere, and that's Passover. What's going on Passover?
Excuse me,
Yeah.
just one word before you start. That the matzah really what we bake, we're making matzah, can other mixed with oil, only with water and
Correct.
so
And therefore?
therefore it's a different matzah from the matzah that they used on the water with the oil. Do you understand my
Yes.
point?
Yeah, I mean, you're really raising a much more difficult question than you even realize, because it's matzah shera, whatever. It's very difficult. Suffice it to say that most paiskim, most halachic decisors say that, when I said before the chametz can only come out of the 5 grains, it can only come out of one liquid also. It can only come out of water. Okay? We paskin that may peiros and machmitzin. If you've got a 100% a liquid that is 100% pure and contains no water whatsoever, it's milk, it's oil, it's eggs, it's grape juice, whatever it is, with not an ounce of water in there, you can leave it more than 18 minutes, it won't become chametz. I don't know if that's scientifically true or not. Halachically, that's the rule. So what does it mean b'chlal when we talk about menachos? Don't let them become chametz. How could they become chametz? There's no water there. It's a very difficult question. Very sharp, thank you. It's a very sharp and very difficult question, and you've torpedoed the rest of my class. No, I'm just... Okay. Yes, I'll take a question. But this is the last one, or else we're not going to get the chametz on Pesach at all. Quickly.
It says you buy in Passover, it says contain no gebrox.
Gebrox. Right. What that means is it's made out of potato starch and it's not made out of matzah meal. Some people have a custom not to eat products made out of matzah meal until the 8th day of Passover. So for that halachic stringency, a lot of the caterers, to increase their Passover sales, a lot of the bakers, whether they're selling to supermarkets or through Passover hotel programs, want to make sure they get every possible customer. So the commercially baked goods are also made out of potato starch and not out of matzah meal. That's all non-gebrach means. Gebrach, tzbrachen in Yiddish means broken. Okay, so in other words, the concept being you take a matzah and you break it into your soup. That's gebrach. All right, but really means any matzah meal, any matzah that's been ground down. That's called gebrach. Okay. So the basic idea is as follows. Okay. In Svar Makdashim, the Hasidic literature, but also in earlier literature, there's another thing about chametz that differentiates from matzah. Not just in its preparation, but also in its look as well. All right? Time elapse. What did I title tonight's class? Getting a rise out of your bread. Okay? Bread, chametz, looks like this. Matzah looks like that. Yeah. It's flat, it's simple. Now, the truth of the matter is, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, because the Yemenite Jews do have thick matzahs. There's really nothing in the laws of preparing matzah that says that a matzah can't be soft and pliable like a gyro.
Really?
Okay, right.
Really?
The Ashkenazic,
Really?
the prevalent Ashkenazic custom, not so fast, ladies, you're not Yemenite Jews, are you? No. So take it easy. Okay.
No,
The prevalent
shocking.
Ashkenazic custom is to make what's called in the Torah rikikin, the wafer form of matzah. But again, that's not the definition of matzah. You want to leave it thick and throw it into the oven that way and bake it in under 18 minutes? Fine. It's matzah. Strictly speaking, that's matzah. Okay. But nevertheless, you know that you're not going to get the rising process, right? When people bake challah for Shabbos. They bake the challah, they throw in the yeast, they pat it down, and then it rises, right? And they leave it for many hours, not just 18 minutes. In less than 18 minutes, you won't get any rising at all. Any thickness that's in the dough will only be from how little you failed to pat it down or to roll it out. But there's no positive, shall we say, proactive rising in under 18 minutes. Okay? So the difference between chametz and matzah, besides the spelling and besides the time lapse, is it's full of air. The fermentation process makes it rise, which is basically, right, there's air bubbles getting in there. So the Sram HaKadoshim say, leaven is symbolic of ego, of being full of oneself, which is basically a void, another void, more air. You are immaterial. You are really non-existent. God is the only true existence. God is only, as Maimonides puts it, existence imperative, mechuyev hametzias. He's got to be. Everything else is optional, right? When we are full of ourselves, basically when we are full of hot air, that gava, that lifting up of oneself, that hubris, that ego, the symbol for that is chametz. Matzah symbolizes simplicity, humility, gratitude towards God, submission. That's all symbolized in the flatness and the simplicity and the non-complex, if you will. You've never seen a braided matzah, have you? Like a braided challah, no. Right? It's not a work of art. A matzah is never a work of art. You're lucky if your matzah isn't so ugly that it's only a matzah that a mother could love. You should consider yourself blessed already, right? But a beautiful matzah, I've never seen a beautiful matzah yet, right? So that's the symbolism. The chametz represents something that's big, that's built up, that's full of itself, that required human input. Please, that required human input. The matzah is simple, it's low, it's humble. Okay? Now here's the amazing thing. Our sages say, it's well known to the one who spoke and the world came into being. The Jewish people say to God, it's our will to do your will. So what's preventing us from doing so? The yeast or the sourdough in the dough, and our subjugation to the nations of the world. Again, we have this metaphor of chametz or sourdough in the dough. What's a sourdough in the dough? Rashi says on the spot, yetzer hara, the inclination to evil. So basically, there's an aphorism in English that we always say, the love of money is the root of all evil. Okay? In Jewish thought, ego is the root of all evil. There are other yetzer haras. There's lust, there's envy. I mean, you open up any Mussar Sefer and on the table of contents, there's a full complement of what we would call yetzer haras, drives or inclination to evil. Nevertheless, the ultimate symbol of yetzer hara, of inclination to evil, is we're telling God, we have an external enemy that's getting us off task. That's it. We're diaspora Jews. We don't have religious and the cultural autonomy. We're in Golus. We're under the thumb of other nations. Sometimes more tyrannical, sometimes less tyrannical, but we're never really independent since the temple was destroyed. That's our external enemy that's getting us off task. What's our internal enemy? Our yetzer hara, our inclination to evil. And what's our symbol? What's our metaphor for yetzer hara? Chametz. No better. We don't say our little inner pig. We don't say our little inner green-eyed monster. Our inner chametz. Okay? Ultimately, everything comes back to ego, to zich. Now, here's something I want to connect with last week's excellent question. I hope to answer that in a minute. Here's something that connects to our class from last week. Last week we spoke about man-eaters and cannibals. Our sages tell us that the taste of the dough that they took out of Egypt, aka matzah, what did they eat when they came out of matzah? Why do we eat matzah on Pesach? It says in the Torah we eat matzah on Pesach because they got out of Egypt in such a hurry, right, that those that were preparing did not have time to rise, and they left in a hurry, so they baked it quickly, and it was matzah. Right? Our sages tell us that dough that came out of Egypt, even though it was man-made, it had the taste of manna bread. We spoke last week about the magical properties of the taste of manna bread. It had the taste of manna bread. What does that mean? Says Reb Tzadok HaKayan of Lublin. Bread is symbolic of the vicious cycle, shall we call it, of eating to live so that you can live to eat. Right? For most of human history, okay, working, laboring, being preoccupied with the material world was not about building a retirement portfolio, was not about paying my insurance and credit card bills, it wasn't about putting the kids through college. It was about putting food on the table. You know, I love it sometimes when these $30 million a year athletes talk about their new contract negotiations and say, hey, I got to put food on my table. You know, it's ridiculous. You know, but in modern economic terms, it's ridiculous. But for most of human history, that's what it was about. Right? People were not eating to live, they were living to eat. Quite literally, because they would die if they didn't live, if they didn't put all of their energies, what we call the oil derech eretz, the yoke of the way of the world. You got to work, you got to work, you got to keep on going. Why? I don't know. So I can keep on going again to keep on going. Right? You got to live to eat. When you're self-reliant, you live to eat. When you're God-reliant, you can eat to live. When it's off of your shoulders, when it's up to God, then you can eat to live. That's the difference between the bracha, the benediction that we make on our bread, Hamotzi Lachem min haaretz, who brings forth bread from the earth, and the bracha that the Jews who dwelt in the desert for 40 years made on the manna bread, Hamotzi Lechem min hashamayim, or Hamorid Lechem min hashamayim, who brings down bread from heaven. When it's bread from heaven, it's clear that my efforts are besides the point. It's totally God-reliant. The matzah on Pesach, what were they running into the desert for? The prophet Jeremiah says in praise of the nation of Israel, Kayamar Hashem, Zacharti lo chesed nu'rayach, Avos k'lo yisayach, Lech techach b'midbar, Be'eretz lo yizarua. So saith the Lord, I remember the order of your youth, the love of our nuptials, when you eloped with me in the wilderness in the desert and went into a land that was not sown. A desert is not an agricultural environment. There's no food in the desert. Good, so they had enough for one meal with the matzah they baked on Passover. It was a tremendous baking, if you will, of love and faith. I'm eloping with God. I'm relying upon God. I don't know where my next meal is coming from. It's not my concern. It's up to God. I'm totally reliant upon Him. My lover wouldn't dish me dirt. Wouldn't do anything wrong to me. We wrote God a blank check twice in our history. When we said Nasav and Nishma, I will do and I will hear before the giving of the Torah, and running into the desert out of Egypt because He told us to. That's the taste of the manna. That's the flavor of the manna bread. That total God reliance, that lack of ego, that lack of sense of, I've got to take care of myself. If I don't, who will? Who will? God will. That's the difference between a matzah and a chametz. So you'll ask me, so why do we eat chametz the rest of the year? Says Reb Tzadok HaKahan of Lublin, there are times for the inclination to evil, and there are times not for the inclination to evil. Our last biblical reference of the evening, B'li Neder. I always come back to it. We never get away from Genesis. Always need the Genesis narrative. Take a look on page 7. Now, at the end of every day of creation, God beholds what He made that day, and He says, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good. The light is good, the firmament is good, the animals are good, the luminaire, it's all good. All good. Comes to the 6th day, page 7, verse 31. God saw all that He made, and behold, it was very good. Not good, but very good. Tov ma'od, it says in the Hebrew. Ma'od is interpreted many different ways in the Medrash. But the simplest way is, even though it seems to be a holistic nachas, God's taking a look, the artist, the genius artist, Da Vinci, puts the last brush stroke on his masterpiece, and now he looks at the whole thing. You know, the shadows I did yesterday were good, and the faces that I did Tuesday were good, and the embroidered clothing that I did on Monday, that was also very good. But the whole painting, very good, very good. All right, that's a simple meaning of the verse. Holistic, right? No. Ma'od, the Hebrew word ma'od, jumble the letters and they spell Adam. V'hinei tov, Adam. What's the ma'od? What's the very goodness in creation? Human. Man. Adam, that's what's good. Says the Medrash, Zeh Yetzer Hara. What's unique about Adam? What didn't God have before Adam and Eve? When he had his angels and he had his amoebas? He had exalted creatures, he had very low creatures. He had everything. He didn't have anything endowed with an ego. He didn't have anything endowed with an inclination to evil. But when he made man, he did. Tov Ma'od. That's exceedingly good. How can the evil inclination be exceedingly good? It can be exceedingly good. Because when you sublimate it, when you marshal that to the service of God, you're not an automaton anymore. You've taken things that are intrinsically evil and you've turned them to the good. Says Reb Tzadok HaKayin, there are times for both. The default setting, most of the year, we have to behave like humans. And we need an ego. And we need to deal with it and grapple it and hopefully subjugate it and sublimate it into the service of God. That's chametz the rest of the year. But there are times when you have to be like angels. And angels eat manna bread. And that's when we eat matzah. On Pesach we eat matzah. I want to close with just two insights. I'm not even going to fully explain it. Just think about it for a minute as we come close to wrapping up our series. First, a word from our sponsor, so to speak. Keep an eye on your email inboxes. I may be giving one class next week. Probably I'm going to be talking about the fruits, the produce of the land of Israel, which the land is praised. It's a land identified with its food and liquids. I want to talk about that possibly, maybe another topic. But also it's possible Dr. Rick Shields is going to be taking over for the balance of the summer. So you'll watch your inboxes and you'll get full details. However, this may be my last in the series. Maybe I'll give one more. I'm certainly not going to give more than one more. Just consider this for a moment. Okay? The crucible of Jewish history, the cradle of Jewish history, national history, is not Mesopotamia, where Abraham came from. It's Egypt, where we went down as 70 souls, basically a moderately sized clan, and came out a couple of centuries later, a nation comprising more than 2.5 million people. 600,000 men between the ages of 20 and 50. Extrapolate demographically, it's about 2.5 million people. That was the birth of a nation. What was the first talk in this series? Fasting or feasting? Why did we go down to Egypt? Over food. We were starving. There was a famine in the land of Canaan. How did we come out of Egypt? With eating. With feasting. Passover sacrifice. Bitter herbs. Cups of wine. Cups of wine is actually rabbinic, but okay. It's all part of the same idea. Matzah. You come in because you're fasting. You couldn't eat to live. And you leave with feasting. And you learn that you're not about living to eat, you're about eating to live. That's one of the main messages of the whole Passover Exodus experience. Lastly, the Kotzker Rebbe asks a great question. Chametz is great the rest of the year. It's great outside the temple. All right? 1 week a year, chametz, verboten, very bad. Don't eat it. Don't derive any benefit from it. Don't own it. If you eat it, it's kares, it's bad news. Why did God give us a mitzvah of matzah? Wouldn't it have just been simpler? Don't have any of the 5 grains around your house. He had to make a mitzvah out of the thing that could be the biggest avera. It's a mitzvah the first night of Passover. Eat matzahs. Be'erev tochel matzos. This stuff is nitroglycerin. This stuff is unstable plutonium. Get it the heck out of here. I'm supposed to deal with it and watch it from the time it's harvested. Like Mr. Bennett said, the rain shouldn't come on it, and I got to be careful and not to mix it with fruit juices and no yeast and no sourdough. Don't give me a mitzvah to eat matzah. Leave me alone. This is volatile material. Keep it out of here.
What's changing it?
Says the Kotzker Rebbe.
It's changing.
The kunz is not to avoid eating. The kunz is to eat right. Okay, whether you're a Hasidic master or a dietitian, it's the same advice. So ultimately, again, I hope I have another opportunity to address you next Wednesday night, but if not, the moral of the story is eat right. Do not live to eat. eat to live. That is the main lesson and message of the confluence of chametz and matzah and getting a rise out of your bread.